Today is another 356 day. Thanks for joining this journey. Let's get into it. I want to get the rear suspension on and the brakes and the cabling and the lines and all that stuff behind the car here. There's so much going on in the back. So in order to do that, I have to put the axles back in. So you guys know I'm having some difficulty with my transmission. It's that one over there. But I'm going to use this temporary one. This is a 741, same as the original, but I'm going to use it to mock up the rear of the car, and then we'll continue to work on that transmission. I have an update for you guys on that one, but here's a sneak preview. So I got this thing all oiled up with this Gibbs oil. It protects the aluminum. Also in the last 356 video, I got these races out. I ended up using some heat with the TIG torch, put a little bead around there, and the races just fell right out. So this surface now has some marine grease on it to keep it from rusting again. I am going to open up the diameter of this bearing a little bit on the inside because this bearing's trashed and I don't want to have to push it on and off this carrier housing because I don't want to lose the dimension here on the differential carrier. I just want to take 1 or 2 thousandths off the inner diameter of this bearing. This material, the bearing material, is very hard, so I may have to switch to a grinding stone. Let me see if I have one. See, it slips right on. Now, you would never run it like this because the bearing's way too loose on the carrier. It really saves pressing on and off the bearings. That's what I want to achieve. On this side though, I don't have another bearing, so I'm going to have to make something up that's going to support the carrier as I, roll the car around the garage. So welcome to my plywood bearing. Voila. See how the differential carrier slides on the wood bearing there? So by no means is this going to wear down the steel carrier. Basically just going to roll it like 20 feet in and out of the garage. I'm sure some of you won't like this, but I kind of like it. Probably 1/4 of an inch negative preload. And so I don't care about that because it's not going to affect the way the car rolls. And now it's time to put on my freshly restored axle tubes. But before that, I'm going to put a little bit of grease on here just to prevent any metal-to-metal contact because I'm not going to be putting oil in this. what you want to make sure is that, see how this is already, you know, binding a little bit, feels a little scratchy. So it's going up and down. It's just not going back and forth very well. So that is probably a little too tight. So I need to add another gasket underneath there. These gaskets do come in different thicknesses. So ideally you just use one. But these are the ones I grabbed. I'm just going to stack them up. Okay, now we got perfect movement, no binding at all. So this is really good. Full up, full down, left, right. It's perfect. And if you push it in and out, there's a tiny bit of end play on there. The other interesting thing to note about this is actually one of the suspension pivots, because all the cornering loads get transmitted right into this side cover. That's what controls your wheel position. So it's considered a hard mount. You know, there's rubber mounts in the suspension at the torsion arms, but this is where most of the cornering loads go, on that hard mount. And then the transmission itself is mounted on some rubber mounts. I'll show you those in a little bit. The reason why I bring that up is because it's kind of a contentious topic with the 911 crowd. Some of them say that the hard bushings are not good, too harsh. And here it is in the 356 using it as a stock car. And nobody ever complains about a hard ride in a 356. These are the tabs for the motor mounts. So we got to get this on. Good news is I found these donuts, the front transmission mounts, but they're dirty. I'm gonna clean them up a little bit. I wish I had found these earlier because I would have painted them along with these. But that's kind of why I'm doing this. I'm kind of discovering where the parts are, where they go, and what needs to be refurbished. It's part of the game. This is the factory paint. It actually cleaned up okay. This side was the side that was exposed. And it's not like rusty, it's just, you know, a little bit worn. So I'm gonna hit the rubber with some silicone oil, and this piece may not need to be replaced. The rubber seems like it's in good condition, so I might just use this as is. On this side it says G-I-M-E-T-A-L-L. These are the cradle mounts for the engine area that goes right underneath here, and I did buy these new. Same brand, Gimital, Getafo. It's time to put it in. I'm just setting up the lift right now. Trying to lift it even though it's uneven. I'm trying to get the front end up, and then I'll position the rear arms on the chassis and we'll get it up in the air, take the dolly off. Here's the first look under my 356. It's a lot of black. But for the most part, it's pristine. Pretty much eat off this thing. Here's a different look at the insulation. It looks great from this angle too. You can see there's some paint here that hasn't been, the paint didn't reach right here. A little bit of dirt and stuff. So I'm gonna clean this up before I put the trans hoop on. Just touch it up with a brush real quick. Yeah, I've touched up the paint a little bit here. It's not dry yet, so it'll dry a little bit less glossy. It'll match perfectly. And I've got the correct bolts in here with the right length. These have some anti-seize on them, so I'm ready to put it in. Back here are the other mounts, and those are open and ready. It's in. There it is. Tucked in there. Some of you guys may have noticed I have not put the sound insulation up above the transmission. There's a hump there that gets some sound insulation. So I'm going to do that at the next round. Got a little tired of doing sound insulation. Pretty tight fit with those wires right there, but that's how it goes. This is great. So now I just got to throw some parts at it, get the wheels on. These torsion bars are in really good shape. No rust at all on them. I've cleaned the splines. They are labeled, like for instance, this has a big R on it. This is the right one. And this is why the hole in the car is here. A lot of people ask about that. But before I put it in, I'm going to put some anti-seize on here just because this is the only unprotected spot. It's bare steel. So smear that around on there. Cover the end. You don't want any of this to get rusty. Normally these are covered in grease, but because this is not my final assembly, I'm just going to put a little bit of anti-seize on the end. These are the old rubber bushings. I'm going to use them for now. These spring plates are going to come off multiple times when I adjust for ride height once the engine's in. So I can replace these at a later date. For now, I just want to get this together. So there's an inner and an outer, just rubber. Some people have put hard bushings on this and been successful with it. I don't think I'll do that on this car, but people do. And then the angle that this goes on is what controls the ride height. So I'm just going to kind of arbitrarily put this on right now, and then we'll see how high the car is. That might be a little too much. That's sitting at about 20. The manual calls for 16 and a half. So I'm going to re-index it again. And that's 12. And back to 20. So now, because it's such a coarse adjustment there, I need to move the inner spline, basically go, I want to go up, so I need to move it clockwise one and then counterclockwise the other. I'm just going to tie this up out of the way so I don't scratch my parts. That's one. 17.7, so we'll do one more. $16.8. I'm going to go one more because I want the car to be a little lower without the engine. So I'm going to do one more. The manual calls for 16 and a half. Yeah, 16.1, 16.0. That's good. Cinch this down a little bit. And now it's up over that little stop right there. So there is a little bit of tension on it. So that's 14.4, but that's with it slightly loaded. So you just have to make sure when you're making the angle measurement that it's not obscured or obstructed by that boss right there. Yay! I am thrilled to have it back on the ground with the rear tires on. It's a big milestone for me, even though I cut a lot of corners. There's no brakes, no seals, bunch of stuff missing, nothing's torqued, but it's on the ground. I can roll it. The chrome still has a bunch of old polish on it. I left like a layer of polish to kind of protect the chrome. So I need to go back and clean some things, take some notes as to what's missing, but this is a huge milestone. My method for putting this back together temporarily is a little strange, but I'm doing it for a couple reasons. One, I need to identify the parts, get everything together, organize the bolts, get some things plated, and also this creates more space. I have tons of parts in here. I need more space to move around, and the more parts I put on the car, the better it is. So when the other transmission is complete and fixed, then it should be a pretty easy job of just swapping it out. I promised an update on the transmission, and the good news is Brendan from Australia sent me a whole care package of stuff. All the bearings, the seals, the gaskets, even a couple engine parts. A really big motivation for me to tackle this, and I'm excited about digging into the gearbox. I have not taken it apart because I'm still building the inspection tools. I'm going to do a complete inspection before I tear it apart. I want to know what the pinion depth is and what the gasket widths are and the shims. I want to document all of that before I just blow it apart and then have to put it back together and guess. So like I said, this transmission was driving actually just fine, making no noise, but the failure was imminent. So I want to just rebuild the pieces that need to be rebuilt and put it back together just the way it was. And so that's why I'm still waiting on finishing the inspection tools before I proceed on the gearbox. That's the game plan, guys. Thank you for following the journey, and I appreciate you for being here. See you next week. Cheers.